Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Free Thought Hour. So let's say welcome to Tercia. How the devil are you, my co-host?
I'm better than I was on
Oh,
Thursday.
good. Yeah, oh,
Yes,
very
I'm.
good. You have been
So
poorly for too long.
I have. I don't
Mm.
know what it's the change of season or what it is. Maybe it's just I don't know God cursing me or the devil not taking care of his own well enough. Shall we know? But I'm here. I'm here and doing well. So that's
Good,
good.
good.
Nice to see you. I can't wait for our visitor, our guest tonight.
Here she is. Say hello to Sylvie Parris. How the devil are you?
I'm doing great. How are
Good,
you?
good,
I'm glad to meet you both. I'm a
good.
little nervous, but I'm excited too.
Ah, nothing
We're
to be nervous about. Nothing
no,
to be nervous about. You just uh, you
you're
just
with
chat.
friends.
Uh,
Yes, I'm definitely with friends.
Mm.
yes, and unless you plan on saying something that might have people react not kindly, but then I'm sure I'm sure you'll know how to manage that as well.
Yes, yes, I do.
So I propose handing this over to you, Tercia, so you can do a woman to woman thing, because I know you'll be interested in finding out why Sylvie's on this show, because she's got an interesting story. She's an escaped Christian of some ilk. So
Yes.
have a go, find out what you can about that, eh? I'll leave
Well,
you to it.
let
I'll,
me
I'll go.
let me
I'll go back and I'll pop in occasionally. Okay.
pop in when you have a when we need to mansplain something to you.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sylvie, I always like to know round about some our guests' chronological age because it helps me to frame your references. So
Okay.
um, we're and it also makes it easier for me to relate because age makes a difference in how what one's life experience was. Are you a child of the 60s, 70s, or 80s?
60s. I was born in 1963.
Okay, that means you and I are exactly 10 years apart,
Okay.
which means that by the time I was in my 20s, you were probably starting a family, probably had a family already,
Yeah, I already
and
had a
and
family.
uh,
I
and
wouldn't. I wouldn't have dared to ask a lady her age.
She didn't ask me my age. She did it very diplomatically.
well, we know that age is but a number, and
Yes,
it's
it is.
it's it's only relevant in insofar as it does define us because it's growing up in the 70s and growing up in the 80s. There are differences. I do know that you used to be religious.
Yes.
Which brand of Christianity did you escape from?
It was um this may not be well known to most people because it never got super big, but the name of the church was called the Worldwide Church of God. It was founded in, I believe, the 40s or early 50s by a gentleman named Herbert W. Armstrong, who started a radio broadcasting, a religious radio broadcast. And the best to describe it was very authoritative. He considered himself the almost like a Protestant pope, but he hated the Catholics.
Of course, yes.
That he was like, God's one true apostle type of thing, and we were the only true church. The makeup of the denomination was a mixture of Seventh Day Adventist, a little Jehovah's Witness thrown in, a smidge of Mormonism in there, a smidge of Old Testament Judaism. Well, it wasn't even Judaism, but the Mosaic laws tossed in there, and just a personality cult. And that's the framework that I grew up in. Was not traditional Christianity. We did not do traditional Christian holidays. They were considered pagan and sinful. It was a very exclusive denomination. You had to be, if you were an adult, you had to be invited to even attend a service. It was a unique experience, and there was a lot of we may get on.
Well, let me guess. There was a strong element of purity culture as well. If you're a woman, you had to. What was the role of women in that
Um,
congregation that you grew up in?
Women were definitely, it was never said out loud, but women were definitely considered the inferior creature, that we were under the authority of the men in our lives. I don't know if you've seen or heard of the umbrella illustration, where there's this image of an umbrella, which is supposed to represent God, and then the husband, and then the wife, and then the children. So
Yes,
it was
yes.
odd little hierarchy. And that's how, that's the understanding that I grew up in. And
Uh,
sex was
for what
only
it's
supposed to be with married, all it's very purity in
yeah,
engaged, yes.
for what it's worth, Sylvie, although you were in a quite a unique Christian congregation, there's much of what you've mentioned that I can identify with. And I grew up in one of the mainstream South African Afrikaans denominations. So
Okay.
there are definitely, Christianity is a very much a mix and match type of organization, but
Yes.
certain things run through like a golden thread. And one of those things is misogyny.
Hmm.
And if it's not openly misogynistic, then it's definitely that hierarchical thing. And so, yeah, we have much in common because although I must say that the denomination I grew up in probably wasn't as restrictive and as because it was a nationwide accepted um, one of the three main congregation or
Yes.
denominations in South Africa. So did you grew up in this is what you were born into?
This I believe my parents started attending when I was 3 or 4. I
Okay.
was little. My mother immigrated from France to Tennessee, met my dad, and then they got married, you know, uh, pretty much almost within months of meeting. Um, and she had been raised uh, Roman Catholic, but wasn't really practicing. And my dad was kind of, he called himself a lapsed Baptist. He just really wasn't practicing either. And I don't know how they found out about this church, or I don't know if they saw it on TV or on the radio. I don't know, but somehow they got interested and convinced that this was the way that they needed to go. And so that's what I didn't attend any other churches until I was much, much older.
Okay, and then you got married in this. You stuck with it until when?
94.
Okay, so that's 30 years ago,
Yes.
uh, which which means that you have been. And what was that like? What made you? Was it easy to get out? Did you disentangle yourself? How did that affect your family
It
relationships? Tell us about that.
it was kind of, there was a series of events that kind of happened. The founder died. Um, and then somebody who came in later saw that maybe taking things more mainstream into the mainstream Christianity might be a good thing. And I remember a pastor, and I remember sitting in this congregation and him saying that he believed that there were other Christian denominations that also were on the good side of God. It kind of, he didn't say it exactly that way. I'm still friends with the man. He's probably the only pastor I still stay in contact with out of all of them I've known. And it just struck a nerve with me, because I'd always wondered, why does God only want these people? And it was almost like it was an aha moment for me. I wanted to know more. And then a few months later, um, my mother-in-law at the time told me that they had lost their church pianist at this little Southern Baptist church that they had attended to all their life, and they needed somebody. And I was a church pianist at this church I had been attending, which was at the time an hour away down a mountain into a different city. And then this one was right around the corner. So I says, okay, sure, I'll do this. And it was a opportunity for me to do an on hands comparative religion.
And it
And
was all under the guise of it's just you doing what I mean. God tells you to go and play the piano. It's an
play the piano.
important. It's an important function.
It was very much so. And after a year, I decided I couldn't do what I had grown up in anymore because I had kind of seen the light that what they were offering me just wasn't good for me. And there were a lot of personal reasons why it had been quite damaging. But what had kept me in as long as it was a fear of God striking me down or punishing me even more. You know, this the whole the weight of trying to please God and try to doing everything that you're told to do to try to get in His good favor and never quite succeeded.
Mm.
Um, was a very difficult thing, and it took me some time to get over the guilt of it. Took me some time to not be guilty about celebrating Christmas with my kids or not going to church on Saturday and just doing normal things on Saturday. That took me a while, but that was the beginning. Even though it took me another 15 years or so to get completely out, that was the beginning of it to finally
Mhm.
see. And then I realized that eventually that even that denomination was too it was pretty much kind of like Worldwide Church of God light. There were some of the same principles in place that I found increasing problems with. And then at the end, I had joined United Methodist Church. And again, music was a common thread. I was in the handbell choir. I was a soloist in the regular choir, and I loved doing it. But by that time, I had completely lost my belief. It just kind of just disintegrated in little bits and pieces.
What,
And go ahead.
what amuses me is the aggrandizement of these organizations worldwide.
Oh yeah.
Church of God. There,
Yes.
there was only the one, and it was in a little town.
Well, they did have a presence in um, some presence in England. In fact, they had a college over there for a while.
Oh,
It's
okay.
called Bricketwood. Bricketwood.
Yeah.
It closed back in the 70s.
Uh-huh.
And then there's little bits here and there. I think there was a little bit of presence in the Philippines, but it never really got um, global, like to say that.
But
But he could reach the globe, he could put radio or television broadcasts. They spent a lot of money on that type of outreach, that
Uh-huh.
evangelical outreach.
Mm.
John, that's another thing. It's quite universal.
Yes.
No pun intended about Christian churches. If you look at the churches that spring up in my area, uh, like toadstools, they all it's in God's international ministries.
Yeah. Yeah.
The world's worldwide, world and international are almost guaranteed to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
Global is
with
another
it.
one. Global
Yeah.
is another one
Yeah.
that they use,
Well,
yes.
Yeah, global is another one. Yeah.
yeah, I ought to I ought to come clean here because, of course, I do global atheist news. But the
But
difference is I don't pretend to have a global presence everywhere. I'm just reporting news
Right,
from around the globe.
right.
yes,
But
and
they wanted to the international or the worldwide or that thing, it implies that they have presence and influence
Yeah,
everywhere,
yeah.
when it's not true. Most people have never heard of Worldwide Church of God or Herbert W. Armstrong
Hey,
or any of that. Most it just he was a blip in the religious radar, was there for, several decades, and then when he died, it was just everything just started to fall apart. The church is no longer in existence. It is, there are some small splintered factions that are there, and as people die out, it
yeah, yeah,
just doesn't get picked back up.
yeah. Well, I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, well,
As
So,
many
Sylvie, so
churches die out as they like.
excuse me?
what
Churches can die out as fast as they like.
Yes, yes, they can.
what strikes me about your story so far, Sylvie, is the sense of guilt. Guilt first for just you're still a Christian when you begin to be the church pianist for this more mainstream congregation,
Hmm.
and yet you felt guilty about leaving the congregation that you grew up in.
Yes, and
And
I did both for a while because there was guilt, and I'm the type of person who will obligate herself and then feel very responsible and feel guilty if she can't keep that obligation, and then continue to over obligate myself. And so it
mm,
took me a while to accept that doing both is just not healthy for me to begin with. And this one place was better for myself and my family than the other was, because there was more that was offered. Plus, I had my in-laws and friends and stuff like that were at this new place. But it's still, yeah, guilt is very, very much a part of the more. I don't know so much about more of the progressive parts of religion because I've never really been a part of it. But in conservative circles, oh, it's the bread and butter.
well, I think even in the more progressive branches, you see, because without guilt, you if you don't need salvation. So
True.
it's essential. And I also think that women find this more pressing than men. And I don't want to
Mhm.
stereotype, but I really do think that there's more of a burden upon women. Hello, James. Nice to see you. Uh,
I would
because
agree
I
with
mean,
that. Yes.
after all, it was Eve that disobeyed and led Adam astray. So the
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
is quite clear about that. And then, of course, as mothers and as wives, and we I think it's sort of bred into us,
Hmm.
that you have certain roles that you have to fulfill, and that guilt element is very, very strong. So how many years did you spend, if any, in the church, being involved as music director and lead singer? How what was it that made you finally realize, I don't believe any of this anymore?
It was abject curiosity. I am I am one of those types of people that loves just finding something that I find interesting and hopping happily down a little rabbit trail as I learn more and more. And along the way, I got interested in religious history and history in general and how things come to be. And I read several books, a couple of them by a woman named Karen Armstrong, who's a scholar and really kind of dug deep into the history and origins of beliefs in God and the main religions and how all that came to be. And it kind of showed me that most religions have lots of things in common, and that a religion is and more of a cultural phenomenon than a personalized relationship between a believer and their God of choice. And I remember a chiropractor telling me one time that if you live anywhere else in the world, say if I lived in Brazil, I'd be Roman Catholic.
Mhm.
If I lived in Saudi Arabia, I'd be a Muslim. If I lived in Thailand, there's a chance I could be a Buddhist or maybe
Mm.
Buddhist most likely, but maybe Hindu.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. And I was that was one of those little tidbits of information that as they added up and I thought about it and I looked into it, I topped down those rabbit trails, I became increasingly convinced that what I had been told all my life was not necessarily true.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
it, the evidence just kept piling up that what I thought was not necessarily so. It took longer to become okay with it, but I stopped believing, and I even told the pastor that at the church I was attending. He was the last pastor I had, and he was very understanding. And he says it's not uncommon, especially in clergy, which was a surprise to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but did not condemn me or tell me to stop or tell me to, do this or do that. My late husband always was a believer. He was a lifelong Southern Baptist. But and I didn't try to talk him out of it because that was who he was and that was who I was. But he was supportive of my journey. And it was something I couldn't tell you the day that it happened, but the longer I tried to stay, the harder it got to stay. To the point I was having, because I have some mental health issues. I have PTSD and depression and all that stuff. Well medicated, nice therapist. I'm good. But I was starting to have panic attacks all the time while I was at that church. I didn't recognize what they were at first, but one day I did. I realized I'm having a panic attack because I'm here. I can't do this anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
took myself, I said, I can't do this. I resigned from everything that I was involved in, got myself into therapy, immediately got to a doctor, got on some medication, and started dealing with that aspect of what was happening in my life. It took me 6 months before I could drive by that church building. And they were lovely people. They were they were the most progressive church in a town of upstate South Carolina that is not known for that. They were, very unique, very community oriented, very much about helping their neighbors and those aspects that I like. It took me a year before I could even sing a note
Whoa.
because it just because my entire life, my entire church life
Yeah.
was wrapped around music.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
I just I couldn't even listen to music that much. It was
Yeah.
just too hard. And I still, I mean, I'll sing karaoke now and then, but I don't sing like I used to anymore.
No, no. Couple of points, if I may. First, are you able to tell us what was the trauma that you got PTSD from?
You want the short list or the long list? The f- the first thing that I remember, and that it took me decades to come to terms with, was the death of my mother. I was 6 years old.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She got appendicitis, which went into peritonitis.
Oh,
The
Oh.
reason it got so bad so quickly is because one of the major church teachings was that to trust in medicine and to trust in doctors was to not trust in God. And if you
bloody
did, you were a
hell!
failure. Oh yeah,
That should be illegal.
yeah. Well, yeah, it
Crime.
should be. It
It's a
should be.
crime to deprive people of medical attention.
It should be. Well, no, not to. Yeah, it should be. But this was a decision that she made because she was afraid not to.
Yeah.
I was 6, my brother was 5, one brother was 5, the other one was 18 months.
Oh,
And I remember, you know, 50 years later, the last time I saw her. alive. I remember 50 years later, my dad sitting, my brother and I, the older one, um, on a bed at my grandparents' house and telling me that she had passed away. I never got to see the funeral. I never saw her graveside until I was much, much older. I was told later that the reason that they didn't do any of this because they thought I would forget all about it and just go on. We didn't talk about it. She was just like wasn't really allowed to dwell on it. We just like just like oh,
No grieving. No grieving allowed.
grief was not allowed.
It's
No,
ridiculous, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
it is, and that set things up. Set things
Mm.
up.
Would it
And then
is
my first husband was also in the church. He was also very abusive, so that added to that mix.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
yeah,
that initial trauma was
yeah.
the
Well,
defining moment.
thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Sylvie, I'm currently in the slow process because of things of being trained as a counselor for recovering from religion.
Mhm.
And it's interesting, although your trauma is not directly related to religion, there's definitely an element of religious trauma because what you had to go through as a 6-year-old was very much directly um, the result of your family's religious beliefs.
Yes.
Firstly, in causing your mother's premature and unnecessary uh, passing, and secondly, in not acknowledging the the human aspects of grief and of how to deal with grief. Because
Yeah.
you see, religion teaches people that God, everything that happens is because God wills it. So firstly, you have no right to question anything. You have to
Exactly.
accept things, and you have no right to show anger. And it's sort of, it's almost in some cultures it's a type of blasphemy
Yeah.
to show any form of grief, and to have to suppress so many things.
Mhm.
You're from the age of 6. I mean, it's just, I'm really sorry that you had to go
And
through that, and I'm
those things, not showing anger, not showing grief, to be angry, especially if you're a child, is to be rebellious, and uh, the rebellious children, are just not allowed to have opinions or say, I
mm,
just don't want to do this. I don't like this, was very
mm,
much frowned upon. To say, I miss my mom. I want my mom. Where, I don't remember ever saying that. If I did, I don't remember much of what happened. That year was 1969, and there are a lot of momentous occurrences like the landing on the moon. I don't remember it.
Yeah.
I can see videos. I don't remember what
Yeah.
thought or felt about that time.
Yeah.
But it just was not. People do not have that freedom of expression,
Well, this is
especially for
interesting.
children and women.
Yeah, this is
mm,
interesting because I'm currently in a dispute with some other members of my family who think that I shared too much to children, and I'm thinking that hiding things, keeping things secret, is not a good idea because that's how you raise children in a cocoon, and they they learn to be deluded effectively in thinking that they have an entitlement to be, princesses, safe from the rigors of actual living. And of course, this wouldn't be possible if you were in, say, Gaza.
Yeah,
Children there know what's going on.
right.
And,
And
and
I understand you want to protect your child. You want them to be safe and to be whole and you want all that stuff. But at the same time, do
you don't
we?
want to deceive them.
No, you don't want to
yeah.
put them in a cocoon
Ah,
and have them completely unaware of the world.
yes, yes, yes.
Because children know, in any case, that,
Oh,
they way smarter. They know when they're being lied to, and
they know.
they know. They absolutely. Sylvia, I'd like to move on and ask you, um, what do you miss anything about your life as a member of a religious community?
No. I did enjoy being in choirs and playing piano and all that stuff. I don't want to do it anymore. I enjoyed listening to the music, but the time and energy and resources and just that sense of I have to be there, that obligation
Mhm.
that hung over every bit of it, I don't miss it. I don't miss any of it. And
Well,
because I'm an introvert, I don't really need that constant
Okay.
interaction with people.
that's the other point I wanted to raise, because it annoys me that religions, apart from Islam perhaps, have tried to possess, to own music. It's not theirs.
No,
We can use music for anything.
absolutely.
War. There's war music, you know? So,
Yes. I mean, there's some absolutely gorgeous religious music. The first time I heard Fauré, I think it's Fauré, Faure,
yeah.
his
War.
Requiem.
Oh
Mm.
yeah.
Oh
Well,
my God, I remember singing
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It was gorgeous, and I loved
Yeah.
every moment because it was poetic and
It
ethereal,
is.
just
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
right.
Mm.
Um,
But it's
but
music. It's
but
not
it's music.
Christianity, you know?
No, no, it was just beautiful, but I also enjoy Chopin. I also enjoy, the B-52s and Ella Fitzgerald and Eminem, just it's
Yes.
music.
It's just music. Uh,
Yes.
do, uh, when you came to the realization, and you left the community, but did you tell people? Did you feel the need to tell people, or was it sort of just it's your thing? How did you deal with that? You've mentioned that you're an introvert, so probably you just sort of went about your way. But I'd like to know whether you told people, for example, if you were employed, did you tell co-workers? Did people ask you, um, I'm not seeing you anymore? What was the social, maybe not fallout, but um, consequences of your leaving your religion?
I did not make a lot of noise. I'm starting to now. One reason is because I've had a couple of encounters where I've said, I'm done with this. I can't do it. And I don't know what it's like where you guys are, but the pushback can be pretty strong. Like they got to get you back in church. You're backslidden. You got to do this. You're mad at God. There's a
Mm.
litany of excuses that people will make because they can't understand that it's just not for you. It's religion can be fine. All my family is still religious, or most of them. There may be a couple exceptions there, and I'm an anomaly to that. I live with uh, family members who are, and they do go to mass, and they do,
Yeah.
they're Catholic. It's, but they
The,
understand it's not for me.
the trouble is, they can't bear dissent because it challenges the validity
Exactly,
of their belief system.
exactly.
Mm.
They cannot connect the dots that religion is not a one size fits all.
Yeah. Mm.
If there was, there wouldn't be 36,000
Yes.
just Protestant denominations. Then you
Exactly.
get into the Catholic ones, and then you get into the Orthodox ones, and then you
Yes.
get into the Islam, and then
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
it's just it's religion is a many splintered thing or splintered thing, um,
Yes.
and so it's a disconnect people have, and um,
It,
I
it
avoid confrontation
fosters,
like a plague. So it's difficult for me to say this is just not something I can do anymore.
yeah. Religion fosters intolerance and division mostly.
Yes, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've seen a lot of too much of that. I've heard and seen things that I just find just heartbreaking. That why do you believe this? Why do you say things like this?
Mm.
And an example I can think of is after 9/11, the day of 9/11, which
Yeah.
was um, just horrible.
Yeah.
I felt that I needed to be with people that we could pray together because I was still religious at the time.
Yeah.
So there was one church that was having like a prayer gathering, and I went, and the preacher got up and he was talking, and he took a very anti-Muslim, militant, let's go get him, it was very vengeful, hateful rhetoric.
Hmm.
And I was appalled. I had to leave because it was so horrible. And I remember after seeing all that and thinking that the deaths are just beginning, because what my country is going to do to the people that we think are responsible for this is going to be 100 times worse.
Mm, mm.
And I was praying I was wrong, and I wasn't. And then to see that the religious community was all on fire. And that was my real beginnings of seeing Christian nationalism rear its head.
Mm.
And then unfortunately, it's just gotten worse. And it's something that was another one of those points, that was one of those nails in that coffin to the demise of my faith, was that kind of mindset.
I want to ask you, Sylvie, uh, speaking about you trying to find some comfort after the shocking events of 9/11, and not finding it, because what you found obviously was more hatred, which is understandable. It's a very human reaction.
Yes.
But and also knowing that you've dealt with intense grief, you've mentioned a husband who's passed away and the death of your mother. What do you think the non-religious community needs to do to create something, or to equip people and to create a sense of community? Do you think there should be a sense of community? Do you think it's something that needs to be fostered? And what do you think how can one respond to grief and loss and pain as a non-religious person? That's something I often hear from religious people. So you believe when you die, you just die? How bleak is that? What would your response be to that?
It was I'm of the belief that when I die, I die. My body is recycled. It turns into other things that may or may not be alive. It isn't bleak to me because I won't be aware of it. So, that's how I see things. It isn't, it's just like, I'll be gone. I won't be aware of it. I won't care.
Yeah.
But to tell somebody else who is going through that pain, and it is unbelievable unless you have gone through the loss of somebody, or having, something horrible happen. Everybody feels pain. Everybody feels loss. Everybody feels confused and scared and adrift.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everybody processes it different.
Yeah.
Some people need some type of hope, even if it's tenuous or false, just to hold on to kind of get them through that next day. Other people find other means. The best thing, my advice, is to be available, to be compassionate,
Yeah.
to try, if you can, to just understand where they're coming from. We may not share the same beliefs or political views or anything, but people are humans. We all share a planet. We all share genetics. We share so much. We have more in common with this than we do not. And to be willing just to be available, to help, to, take a meal, or to listen to them,
Yeah. Yeah.
rail,
Yeah.
or just that's something that anybody can do, but something that the atheist community should be doing. We
Yes.
don't need to put an agenda. You don't need to believe or disbelieve or do this or do that. When, and what's happening in the eastern part of my country is a prime example. Some of the things people are saying are just to just make me angry. But
Yeah.
then you see and hear of people who are doing that. They're not making religion an issue at all. They're just saying, just help. Be,
Yeah.
if you got to pray, pray. If you want to do this, do this. If you want to give money,
Yeah.
do this. It is, let's just be available to other people. And
Absolutely.
as someone who has gone through trauma, as someone who has gone through grief, it's easier when you don't have to go through it alone.
Yes.
I've been through both.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
let me tell you, it is far easier to know and to trust that you have people in your corner.
Yes.
And I don't care if they believe in three-headed monsters. If you're in my corner, you are with me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
lost my first wife many years ago, more than a quarter of a century ago.
Sure.
And we were like two halves of the same person.
Oh,
And there was lots of weeping. In fact,
yes.
I can feel myself tearing up now just thinking about it.
You never
Uh,
get over something like that. You
you
just,
know,
you learn to live with it.
that's right. But you're right. You need companionship to, in an attempt. There's no way the gap can be filled,
Mm-mm.
but you need
Mhm.
something to take your mind out of the grief a bit. And what really annoys me is the way these theists look at it as an opportunity to recruit. They think, oh, you're vulnerable. I'll grab you for my religion. And then they go through all the our hopes and prayers are with
Yeah.
you nonsense.
When
It's
my when my husband passed away, I got 2 letters from somebody in Georgia, who were a Jehovah's Witness. Didn't know who they were. I saw the letters, I saw the address. I go, "Who is this person?" This is something Gary had known. I says, "Who is this?" And then I opened the letter and I saw what it was. And I was so tempted to write them back and just spew all over every nasty bad word I could think of.
mm, mm,
And I didn't because it made me angry. It wasn't comforting.
no,
I found it
Mm.
condescending and
yeah,
ins
Yeah.
and just insulting that
mm,
people would try to take of advantage of somebody who is
yeah,
undergoing grief. There was no compassion there.
no,
It was a recruitment opportunity is how
yeah,
they
yeah,
saw it.
yeah. Here's our chance. We've got another sheep to the fold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Are you currently involved in any sort of activism, Sylvie? And what's your opinion about um, activism for secular humanism or for humanism or for atheism or any sort of activism um, that prompts discussions or whatever about religion?
Well, I do, um, co-own an atheist group that, you guys are aware of, but I kinda stay mostly in the background with that. Activism, I'm not an activist, I'm more of a quiet background supporter. That's where I feel I do best. I'm supportive, I have lots of try to have conversations with people and learn. I think activism is needed. I think that there are groups that are doing an excellent job of bringing awareness to what the secular community and atheist and agnostic communities represent, who we are, what we do, how we feel about things. We're humans too. We're your neighbors. Sometimes you're your
Mm.
family members, and we need to kind of find ways to help foster these relationships and these bases of understandings. And does it need to be organized? Not necessarily. There's plenty of groups out there who do a good job of it, but does it need to be under this great big umbrella? No. There are 1,001 different ways that people can come together for good causes, and I'll support them in ways that I can, but I am not going to be out in the forefront. It's not my personality. But I support it. I do support that it should be a thing, and I'm glad to see that it's becoming more of a thing as the years go on.
For our audience, Sylvie, can you tell us the name of the group that you are part owner of so that we can put a banner going along the bottom here?
Sure. The name of the group, it's a Facebook group. It's been around, I think, 8 or 9 years. So it's been around for a little bit. And it's called uh,
Yeah.
Atheistically Speaking.
Atheistically speaking?
Correct.
Yes, that's right. And it's with what's his name? Greg.
Greg Craddock
Greg. Yeah,
he's
yeah,
the
yeah,
founder, and I'm one of the co-founders.
yeah,
We're the
yeah,
original
yeah.
co-founders.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
And
where.
another new
it's
group for
some of
you.
it's just there is some discussion with it's not so much a discussion group as a people just to kind of put it started out so much that but it kind of morphed into just people just add content and then we can discuss things if we can and
Yeah,
he's a little bit more stricter about rules than I am. I'm
he is,
willing to have
isn't he? Because I've had a bit of a run in with him because
yeah
I've met.
he can be a bit of a curmudgeon but I love him still. He's been
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
good
I've
friend and he's taught me a lot.
I've known him for years, and he's a bit of a conjurer too, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, he
But
can be.
the thing
But
we've
that's
run
okay.
in,
He owns it, so
yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah,
not
of course.
unapologetic.
He's the boss, of course. But the thing that we've run in about is he thinks that you can talk about religion and exclude politics.
No,
I don't. I don't think you can do that because, I mean, look at the history. Religions have always been trying to get into government. I mean,
religions have formed governments.
yes,
Um,
yes.
I understand what he's trying to do because we don't want, at least in some respects, there is a ways that you can keep things separate and have a space for just this and then have a space for just that. But ultimately, it is very difficult. It takes effort to keep the two separate.
Mm,
And that's what we try to do is to give a space that it doesn't it just only one
well, good luck with that.
is because we have another one that's called politically speaking
Yeah,
that
yes.
and
Okay.
it doesn't get near the traffic.
No.
And there's other entities out there that do both and they do both well. It's
Mm.
just he wanted to keep politics completely out of the mix.
Can't be done.
The main reason I think is because American politics just just to pardon the phrase, it's a shit show,
It is.
and it can just be all encompassing, and we did not want that to
Mm,
happen. We didn't want that just to bleed in and just take everything over.
yeah, yeah.
I know Great Britain's politics can be a little strange too. I don't know much about South Africa's, but
Oh,
Yeah.
Great Britain's you have your things 6 weeks and it's done, and then you move on to to the next
yeah,
batch
yeah,
of idiots.
yeah, yeah.
With
Yeah.
with
We
the
don't,
U.S., it's just on. It never stops. It
we
just
don't make such a meal of it as you do in
oh
the
my
US.
gosh, it's not a meal; it's a freaking banquet.
Yeah,
It's constant.
yeah. We had an
I
election
think.
recently, as you know. We had an election
Mhm.
on July the 4th,
Yes.
and what happened in our case is on July the 5th, after the result of the election had been declared, the removal vans carted out the stuff of the previous prime minister from 10 Downing Street, and the new removal vans brought in the stuff of the new prime minister, and that was it done. You
Oh
know?
my, a day.
Yeah, yeah. You have
Oh
this. You have
my
this system where,
God.
in the States, you have this system where you have an election on November the 5th, and then you argue about it until January the
The
6th or
Yeah,
whenever it is.
when I think it's this year, it's gonna be the 20th. I don't remember how it is,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it goes. I mean, the election is set, and you normally, this last
yeah,
election cycle was
yeah.
not normal.
Well,
But
that's
normally the election is there, and then they
yeah.
they they spend months in transition, and
That's just
it
stupid.
shouldn't be.
Don't
It's
do that.
stupid.
It's
Yeah,
stupid.
it is, but that's what we got, and but again, it becomes all encompassing, and it's easy to get all wrapped up in that and not focus on other things. And so, yeah, we kind of compartmentalize things a little bit
Mm.
in the Facebook group, but it is by design because we don't want it to go too much into the weeds with the politics side of things, recognizing
which
that
which
it's
I can
difficult
understand
to separate them.
in the American context. I mean, I follow American politics very keenly, but to me, it's like it's like it's like watching a horrific road accident as it's unfolding in slow motion.
Yes.
It's apt.
You,
That's an apt
you
description.
don't want to, but you just can't.
Yes.
It's uh, my husband, when he sees me, I try to follow the Independent, David Packman, and you know, I don't really do the mainstreams, but even when I'm watching, my husband says, "Well, why are you doing this?" It really is gruesome.
Yes,
And
it's insanity, but it's our insanity. You know, we
yeah,
don't want you guys.
but
Please don't ever go our way.
I think that the one thing about America that fascinates me, and I wish I've mentioned it so often, and I can't find the talk, and I don't know who the author is. He wrote a book. Must have been 9 years ago that I saw the presentation. It's all about how America is this roadshow, and that the whole history and all the politics. It's he says it's like those traveling shows that you had in the time of the American West, and it's
Oh yeah,
all
like
about
carnivals. Yes.
yes, and it's all about making money. And I think your elections are about making and spending money. I think it's
Yes,
it's
very much
like
so.
there's definitely an element of that I don't see anybody talking about. I mean, you just have to look at the footage of a Trump rally.
Yes.
Now,
Oh, it's you go. A Trump rally is going to have appeals for money, and it's going to have uh, vendors outside
yes,
selling
yes,
merchandise,
Mm.
yes,
and it's just merchandise. Monetizing is everything. Is the core principle of this man's
Um,
presidential campaign.
we don't
exactly.
have any of
And it's the same, and it's the same with religion, and I don't know what it's like for other countries, but
that.
in
Yeah.
this country,
We don't have any of that. You can't buy a hat with Labour written on it like you
yeah,
can with
Yeah,
with
in South Africa, we're not big on that either. You do
it's
get your you do
it
get pastors.
is
Mm.
yeah. It isn't there isn't so much the money that is spent on political campaigns is obscene.
Mm.
Mm.
There and it's unnecessary. It really is unnecessary.
Yeah.
And then when you get um, religion sticking their dirty fingers into it, it's even just grotesque. An
And,
example how they're married is the last week, right after the hurricane hit Florida and zoomed its way on a um, candidate, Trump was in Georgia. Standing next to him was a man named Franklin Graham. I don't know if you know who he is.
I saw that.
Yeah,
Son of Billy.
son of Billy. He's a not nice person. He is on the hateful spectrum of religion.
Yeah.
He's
Yep.
very very anti everything that's diverse about humanity. Standing there, his organization Samaritan's Purse, which does a lot. They're good at disaster relief, and the Southern Baptists have some really good organizations for disaster relief.
Mm.
The downside is that they use it as opportunities for proselytizing, but they were on the ground with tractor trailers of supplies because that's what they're good at. They can get stuff there. They're organizing, get things there quickly, like truckloads of bottled water and stuff like that. They were there, and this candidate was taking credit for the work of the volunteers for Samaritan's Purse, which is the organization Graham runs. And Graham sat there, didn't say a word. Say, wait just a minute. This isn't you. And then right after that, Trump starts a GoFundMe campaign to
Yeah.
raise money for hurricane victims,
Mm.
knowing that. And a lot of his appeals, you see a lot of his stuff, he will dip into the religious
Yeah.
rhetoric over and over again because unfortunately people are so do not recognize the difference
Yeah.
between politics and religion. They think that they should be one and the
Yeah.
same because they've been led to believe that.
It,
And
it's
it's frustrating, but it's so sad because they don't want to see that it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
it's deeply ironic that the one country that has a separation of church and state in its constitution is the one where they are the worst, most toxic kind of bedmates um, in the world.
And what is I think what the intentions of the founders, and I'm probably wrong, but I think what the intentions of the founders is that they did not want a state-run religion like the
Mm.
Church of England in Great Britain. They did not
Which
want
might
that,
have been better in the long run.
which may have been better in the long run. But because they knew the European history, all the religious
Yeah.
wars that had gone on for hundreds of years, and I think that they were hoping to avoid that from happening. And for a while there was some success, but they just never could keep it long run because religion quickly started worming their way in. A new community was considered a success a lot of times when they had their first church
Mm.
because
Well,
new communities, as they're growing west, was considered an opportunity
yeah.
to gain new people.
So
John,
I want to defend Anglicanism here. I'm not a member, but what we did back in those days, about 500 years ago, was we gave the church what it wanted. So it lost the motivation to campaign. It's been completely defanged,
Yes.
and everybody's gone.
Yeah, the church doesn't have the Anglican church started with Henry VIII. Am I correct?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, and I know it took a while before the Catholic, Protestant, all that stuff. I know that it took a little bit while, but you're right. Religion's influence over the state waned.
Yes,
Just it lost its teeth. It didn't have the pull that it once did.
yes,
mm,
that's right.
And in the United States, it was it
The opposite.
never really
This,
quite went away, and then it's just kind of gone back. It's kind of gone the other extreme. It's starting to get where there are laws in the books in several states
yeah,
that
yeah.
if you want to run for public office,
You've got to be
you
a
have to
Christian.
you have to not necessarily a Christian. You have to have a declaration of a belief in God.
Yeah, yeah. It's the opposite here. If
Yeah.
you declare you've got a faith, nobody votes for you.
And people run their entire campaigns
Yeah,
on
yeah.
their beliefs in
yeah,
God, and those who are of different faiths or of no faith, they're the
yeah.
exception. I think there's room for all to be there. I think we should have a good cross representation of all the people in this country. Unfortunately, it isn't that way. Um, but yeah, it's they are too ingrained into one another to separate.
Yeah.
It's getting a little bit more. It's starting to change, but it's going to be a while. It's going
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
a while.
Well,
So
we're
in
running
the
out of time, but I want to announce that I'm sure you know this, that Melania Trump has her memoir published
Mhm.
on Tuesday, and she's come out strongly in favor of abortion.
what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm going to be
Well,
on the cover of Vogue next week.
ah,
I don't believe it. I think I don't believe her. I think she is um, trying to appeal to a wider audience.
Well, maybe, but it'll sell a lot of books and it will cause friction with the Republican Party and her husband.
mm.
I don't. Yeah,
Maybe.
I don't think these two even. I think they only talk through their lawyers anymore, but that's just
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there can be friction between them because I think they're so far apart that
Yes.
there's
Yeah,
no chance
yeah,
of friction.
yeah,
But
yeah.
in the, I do want to ask. I know, John, just one question.
Oh, no, because it opens such a can of worms.
No, it's not that one. It's another. I want to ask
Oh,
Sylvie.
okay.
Sylvie, besides Free Thought Hour, what is your favorite non-religious YouTube channel? That's what I want to know.
Charlotte Dobre. She
You see, spell me that name. I need a
it's
new.
Charlotte.
Yes.
Dobre. She's a comedian, and she just talks about some of the crazy stories people put on Reddit or Instagram, and just makes fun of it. Charlotte Dobre. She's based in Vancouver, British Columbia,
Okay.
and she's a comedian, and it's like a palate cleanse for me because I love satire and I love
Yeah, we will.
laughing at people's silliness, and that's as far as that's usually if I'm doing something and I want to watch YouTube, I'll turn her on just to.
Well, thank you for
You
that.
see,
We will look
that's
her up.
why.
Okay.
That's why I had to ask that question, John. That it was important.
Absolutely.
It was predetermined. It was determined.
God did it. Yes, I know.
Yes.
No. Then I'm God because I did it.
Okay, let's try and get her on the show, Charlotte Dobre. But next week we have Free Thought Hour with Seth Garron. He's another interesting guest, so look forward to that.
Okay. I'll be tuning in.
Great. Meanwhile, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It was
Thank you.
Lovely
to
seeing you. I
meet
hope we
you,
get to talk
Sylvie.
again. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you to my co-host, and thank you to our viewers, especially the ones which will watch us in future as this a podcast. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.